This is the Blackout Podcast.
Hello and welcome to the Blackout Podcast, where I get to talk to amazing people that do amazing things. And today I have Jandera Simmonds, a poet. Thanks for coming on the show today.
Thank you for having me. I'm really grateful to be here.
Yeah, I mean, first off, how did you get into writing poems?
I probably wrote my first poem when I was like 7 years old.
Oh, wow.
Probably actually more an incantation because I'm into weird things like that. But I didn't get serious about my poetry until a couple years ago when I started going through a hard time. And then it's like poems just kept flowing out of me. I really used it as a way to get out like some of my inner anxieties and use my voice as well as, just a therapeutic thing. Yeah.
Okay, and so how long ago was this when you're dealing with this bad time?
I'd say about 3.5 years ago, almost 4 years ago.
What happened?
I've suffered insomnia since I was like 14 years old, so it's very hard for me to sleep. And then my friend Joey passed away. He lost his life to gun violence around that time. So it was very difficult for me because I didn't even expect it to hit me as hard as it did. He and I were childhood friends. A group of us would all hang out together from like grade 7 to grade 8 to grade 9. And I ended up seeing him like a couple months before he passed away. We were just in a bar, you run into like some of your childhood friends, and to hear that like he wanted to join the army and he wanted to, get his life together and so on was great. And so I ended up logging on Facebook one day after hearing that somebody got shot, and I saw, it was him. And that was a really hard time for me. So I was already dealing with my insomnia, and then, just finding out that he was gone. He's even younger than me, and, knowing that he won't get to see his family, they won't get to spend time with him, he won't get to, have children or do all the things that he wanted to do. And it was a hard time for me.
I can't even imagine that. And so writing the poem was helping you cope with that?
So I actually didn't start writing poems right then and there. I kind of, there was a couple more things going on. Like my sister, who I've always had a tumultuous relationship, recently moved home after that. And I still wasn't sleeping. And so it was just kind of like one thing after another. I started drinking more heavily, which I wouldn't say I was a complete, drunk or an alcoholic, but just for me, it was a lot. And so it became some way to cope.
Yeah.
And yeah.
Wow. So it's like things were just pretty much piling up on each other, one thing and then the next thing and then the next thing. And before poetry, were you coping in any other way apart from the drinking, I'm guessing?
Yeah, I've always been like a singer-songwriter, so I love music. I love singing and things like that. I've been writing songs probably since I was 4 years old, though I don't know, they were great hits. Like my parents and stuff, my parents would go out and I'd be at the babysitter's or at my grandmother's and I'd make up little songs like, Mommy, Daddy, I want my mommy, Daddy. You know what I mean? I don't know if that's the work I'll win a Grammy for, but, it's something.
Yeah.
And then, like I said, when I was 14, I first started going through insomnia. I was writing a lot then too. So like I kind of pick it up and put it back down and so on. But usually the times when I'm stressed out the most, I'm going through things is when I find power in the pen.
That's so powerful. And do you remember the first thing you wrote?
A poem.
I mean, I guess in this period,
In this period.
Yeah.
I probably wrote a poem about my hair.
What? What about your hair?
Just like trials and tribulations, like being an African Nova Scotian woman and societal pressures and
yeah.
dealing with it, and the choices that it doesn't seem like a big thing,
Yeah.
but it's part of your identity.
Gotcha.
It's part of your self-health and so on. And people make big deal over your hair, sometimes more so than you make yourself. Especially certain other cultures and so on. Sometimes they want to touch it. They want to know, how do you get it this style? What's going on here? And you're like, well, it's hair. Gross. Wash it, comb it. So that's kind of funny.
So I think you actually can recall the first thing you wrote.
That was the first thing I wrote during this difficult time.
Yeah, and I'm saying the actual first thing you wrote, not from this time.
When I was 7, I wrote a poem. It was, like I said, more of an incantation, but it was like the darkness chills grows wonder. One so great shall be powerful. Nobody understands the sunset. Don't know where I was going with that or why that came to me,
Wow.
but I can still remember it.
At 7.
At 7.
Holy smokes. Wow. And then, so you wrote a thing with your hair, and then you said a lot of things were coming out of you. So were you just writing it down? Were you sharing it with anyone? Was it online?
So during that time, I started seeing someone, and, we were good at first, I thought. And then, about 6 months onward, I realized that he was in another relationship with another woman, who he had been with for 9 years, and they were engaged.
Oh, wow.
First and foremost, I respect relationships, and I definitely respect the sanctity of marriage, but, that was something I was unaware of.
Yeah.
So through that process, I was very angry, very sad, very hurt. And even now I started to go back in that place when I talk about it. And, so that brought a lot of creative juices out of me. I just started writing, poems about everything. Yeah.
Wow. And then, how long from writing these poems to how long did it take you to decide to share it or put it out there?
It took about maybe a month. And I just, like I said, I kept writing. And my best friend, I was over at her house and we were talking and just discussing things. And she was going through a bit of a hard time too. We were both going through breakups at the same time. And I just started sharing with her some of my poetry. And she's like, wow, this is really good. And I was like, yeah, eventually, I want to do a book. But, I wasn't in the right frame of mind to be, even doing that. I was just doing it for me. And eventually I just started showing more family and friends. And I did post a few things online at my Facebook at the time. And, the results have been really powerful. People really seem to enjoy my writing. And I'm really happy about that.
How do you decide what you show on Instagram?
Okay, so my Instagram is kind of a bit of a melting pot. So depending on the day, you might get a different version of me.
Yeah.
I usually like to share things about my nephews and about working with kids. So if I didn't mention that by day, I work with children. I really enjoy it most of the time. And yeah, so it's become something that's really helped me. It's like if I find a quote that I like or a situation that I'm going through, I just think something's funny, I just share it with my friends, my family, and my audience, and
Wow. And actually, let's talk about the work with kids. What do you do and how long have you been doing that?
So when I got out of high school, or even before I got out of high school, because I started via a co-op program, I started working at a daycare. And so I did that for a couple years. And then I left the daycare and I started working for a cleaning service. And I ended up injuring my rib and I couldn't work for a while.
Oh, no.
So it was actually after this whole situation, after struggling with my insomnia and my friend passing away, and then having been heartbroken, and then finding out that I suffered my first miscarriage, where that time where I was
Well,
writing.
The miscarriage was it with that person?
It was.
Oh, okay.
It was. So there's layers on that too.
Yeah.
It's yeah. So anyway, that's I wasn't working for a while because I injured my rib. So that became part of my therapy. Was I realized that I wanted to start working with kids again. So I got back into it, and that also really helped me.
Wow.
Yeah.
And so that's like a day job you do?
That's my day job, yeah. So I work at a school.
What age are the kids?
So I typically work with 7 and 8-year-olds.
Uh-oh.
The joys.
They really know to talk at that time and they don't have any filter.
Yeah.
So it just comes out.
That's the thing, right? Like, it gets annoying at times and hectic to deal with, especially when you have like 50 of them that you're dealing with at once. But it's like, it really does teach you things because you're like, okay, well, they're so raw at that age. Like, they don't have the societal pressures and they're not putting on for anybody. So it's like, if they're angry, they're angry. If they're happy, they're happy. You know what I mean? And that really teaches you to be like raw because you're like, wow, like, why are you hitting this person? Oh, well, they told me they didn't want to be my friend. You know what I mean? Like, we can't act like that as adults in society, but it's almost, it's really, they're so genuine. You know what I mean? So it's a, elementary school and junior high combined. So I do get interactions with the older kids as well.
Oh, wow.
So that's fun too. Teenagers. That's fun.
Does working with kids, does it take you back to yourself at that age? Do you kind of reflect on yourself at that age working with kids? And especially the teenagers.
Oh. Well, yeah, that working with teenagers shows me that I probably should have been a little kinder to adults when I was younger. But definitely working with kids in general, I just feel like it does because there's things that they're going through or even little things that they say and you remember, okay, I remember doing this or I remember thinking that way when I was that age or, you know, like I remember like when I didn't have a care in the world and I was just a kid who's out here just playing with my friends, you know what I mean? So it really does make you think on different stages in your lives and how you went from that place to where you are now. Wow. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I know. That's why I don't work with kids. I wasn't a good kid.
Well, you work with adults, and that's harder. That's harder for me to do.
Oh yeah. Well, I don't know. Well, for you, yeah. How? In what way though?
I mean, in terms of like, it's harder for me to deal with adults who, you know, take a temper tantrum versus a child who takes a temper tantrum. Because I'm like, one of you knows better in the situation. You know what I mean? So,
but like, I mean, I don't think that happens often with older. Well, let me put it like this. It shouldn't happen often with older people. And if they do, then yeah. They need some talking to.
You need some talking to.
And how important is family to you?
Family is very important to me. I was lucky enough to grow up with a wonderful family. You know, of course, at times there's difference of opinions, and you know, there's times where you feel like you need more of something that maybe someone's not able to give you. But I'm really happy to have a good, strong family base, and I'm really grateful. You know, I happen to have 2 older sisters, a younger brother, a father, and a mother, and so on. Actually, my dad has been very instrumental in who I am today. I'm positive that I wouldn't be half the woman I am, half the person I am without him.
Wow. Why do you say that?
He's just a wonderful man, and he's really taught me to be like a free thinker and to question things, and he's always told me, choose to be smart. You know what I mean? So I take that with me everywhere I go.
Wow. And that's great. It's always great to hear such stories because there's this misunderstanding that some people bring into, especially people of Black culture, thinking like, you know, the father's not there. And so when you hear stories like that, it's like, you know what, it's just a misconception that especially portrayed in the media. And that's the other thing again, you know, like the media is so powerful that you get shown one thing enough, you start thinking, oh yeah, that might be what is happening.
That's the norm.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Media is there to bring a certain platform, a certain idea, a certain perspective in your mind. And I think, you have to be mindful of that, like what you subject yourself to, whether it's, a radio station, television, a podcast, a movie, a documentary. It's like everything has an angle, and you have to look at that and you have to see where everything fits, like in your mind and in your life, in society, as well as, your level of consciousness. And I just really feel like that's one of the biggest gifts that he gave me was, question things, look at things, like make sure something makes sense to you. Don't just take what people are giving you. And in terms of like the Black community or like people of African descent, I really feel like it's more the norm to have your father there, to have a good family base. I feel like when people are like, oh, most people don't have their dads or they don't have this and so on, or it's a broken family, I think that is like a media construct. And I think, if you spend time in the community, if you talk to these people in places and go to these places, you'll realize that most people, that's not the case. And, it's few and far from in between. And what's most important is love. And if that's what you're looking for, you will surely find it. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And here's one. How is it navigating life in the city being African Nova Scotian?
Well,
Well,
there's definitely times where it's difficult. I think sometimes people feel like because, it's not the Jim Crow era, or, we're not enduring slavery, that racism doesn't exist, prejudice don't exist, and things like that. That hasn't been my experience, because I see and feel these things every day walking around as a woman of color. And I'm very honest about that. But it's like it does become normalized at some point. It's like these things are not new to us, so it's kind of like it's not dramatic when it happens, and I hate to say that. Because, I have gone to stores and been followed around. I have had people like want to look in my bag and so on, or people want to look at my ticket but let 5 other people who don't look like me go. You know what I mean? So those things definitely get hard. Specifically, I have 2 young nephews, and, I like to take them out and do things with them. And sometimes it really saddens me when I see like things happen like that in front of my nephew who's 7, and he's asking me questions like, Aunt Jandera, like, why did that happen, and so on. And it's like, I have to be honest with him because he's going to face these things too. But it's like, it's very difficult because I don't want him to have to face those things so early. And I know, because of society, those are conversations that we definitely need to have.
and how difficult is it having those conversations?
It's very difficult because, I'm always honest with him. You know what I mean? I don't like to lie to anyone, much less like children. So it's like, I'm always honest, and I just answer things to like the best of my ability and to what he can understand. So it's like, there's all kinds of different people in the world, and some people don't like those differences, or they may have been taught something different, and that doesn't make you a bad person. That doesn't mean what you're doing is wrong, but you also know the right things and the ways in which to behave. And it's people aren't always going to like you. Sometimes it's for the right reasons. Sometimes it's for the wrong reasons, So.
And I think when it comes down to it, right? I mean, you, all you can do is just show who you are. People will accept that or not.
Right.
And it isn't really a reflection on you. I don't think so, because people see what they want to see.
That's been like the biggest realization for me, I think, is people can only accept what you are or what you're doing at their level of understanding or at their willingness to want to understand. Right? That's been huge for me. I'm finally like getting that like sometimes it's nothing to do with me. It's all that person or their experience or what they're going through at a time, or, their capacity to love. So it's like,
Yeah.
and everyone's fighting a battle.
Everyone has their own thing to deal with. Everyone has their own thing to deal with. When was the last time you wrote?
I write things all the time.
Yeah.
I throw them away because I'm like, I'm like, no, you know what I mean? Yeah, I write things all the time. Last time I wrote something good that's subjective. The last time I wrote something I was proud of,
Yeah.
probably about maybe 6 months ago.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
Why? What made you proud of that thing you wrote?
Um, I don't know. It was truthful. The things I tend to write about are true experiences that I've had, or true feelings, or so it was raw and vulnerable, and I think it was exactly what I wanted to say at that time. And I think, regardless of what I was going through at the time, I was proud of that because it was authentic to me.
Wow. Do you ever have moments where you write something and it's so heavy that you decide not to share it?
Yeah. Yeah. There's a couple of those. And sometimes you write something so heavy that you need to get away from it. You need to not think about it. You need to not read it. You're just like, wow, I can't confront that right now. And then sometimes I come back to it and I'm like, okay, now I can work through this. You know what I mean? But yeah, there's definitely some heavy things that I write that I haven't shared with anybody.
Yeah, yeah. I think, I think personally, since I write, I know that there's some things that just make sense to you. And when people read it, they're always going to take it out of context, no matter how you explain it.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. So with the kids, what are some things that you try to teach them?
Manners. But
Please and thank yous.
right, but morals first and foremost, right? Like, and I try to be an example of that. So, there are kids that aren't under my specific care who will come up to me and ask me questions, or if they're having a problem with another student or another adult in the school, they'll come to me and ask me what I think about that. And, though it may get busy at times and I'm trying to do other things, I really, really appreciate that because that tells me, they feel safe with me and they trust me to handle the situation.
Yeah.
So I feel like I try to be that person who they can come to and the type of person that I think I would want to talk to. You know what I mean? I try to be open and I try to tell them the right thing to do as opposed to the wrong thing. I think sometimes in life when, we've done something wrong or we're sharing something with somebody, they're like, well, you shouldn't have done this. Well, that doesn't really help me now. I like to say, well, I'm sorry that you're going through this. Maybe you should try doing X, Y, and Z. You know what I mean? And focusing on the solution as opposed to the problem.
I think people that focus on the problem are just, I don't want to say dicks, but but at the same time, if I guess I was just raised in a way where if you're not bringing something to fix this thing, whatever you bring into the process is just making things worse, right?
Right.
And so I was like, oh man, you did this, blah, 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 and you shouldn't have done this. Like, what? Obviously the person knows this, right? And the person is just coming to you to say, how do we fix this now?
Right.
Because you're like, oh yeah, because you did that. Yeah, of course, like it happened. So I'm like, if you're not bringing a solution, like, I guess the best you can do if you don't have a solution is just listen.
Right. That's something I've learned too, like having suffered miscarriages yeah.
Oh wow, I thought it was just the one.
No.
Okay.
But something I learned during that time and is really that, a lot of times people don't know what to say. And it's kind of a elephant in the room. No one wants to talk about it. And I know sometimes like I just need a listening ear or I need someone to tell me, it's okay. But a lot of people are like, they shy away from it because they don't know what to say or, they feel awkward about it. And it's like, it is something that happens as natural as living and breathing is and reproducing and creating a family. It's like there are, you know, there's things along the way to
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. Wow. Um, I had to. I
I'm
had to let.
sorry.
I had to let that sink in a bit.
I'm sorry.
No, it's fine. And this is one of the issues I would deal with sometimes because we are comfortable pushing the heavy things away, right? I'm not gonna deal with this. We'll just
Right.
push it away. And so the way to handle it is to just literally handle it, or talk about it, or
Right.
bring it to the fore. Because if you keep piling it away, one is the pile's gonna be so high, there's no place to keep it. You're like, oh fuck,
Right.
I should not have
Right.
done
Should
that.
have dealt with that.
Yeah. And the thing is, you know what? Sometimes like it's small, right? If you just deal with it right away, it's a small little thing. But if you keep piling it up, it keeps getting bigger, it keeps getting big, it gets out of hand. And now something that could have been fixed with just a little bit of effort will take years and years and years and years. And yeah, I just think we need to talk about things and we need to bring things forward, and rather than, and sometimes actually sometimes this, if you know, I guess, that I don't want to sound judgy or I don't want to sound preachy, or I would just keep quiet. I'm like, okay, yeah, I understand.
Right.
Yeah, just fucking keep it. Because if someone trusts you enough to share something that heavy, that means you're special to them. That means they respect you enough,
Right.
and you should reciprocate that respect by at least treating them with the level of respect they've shown you by sharing this thing. And then rather than say, fuck you, you shouldn't have done this, say, I hear you, I understand you're dealing with these things.
Right.
And that's, yeah. And rather than,
That's so true, though.
yeah.
But it took me a while to learn the first part of that in terms of like deal with things right as it happens, because I used to be someone who kept a lot of things inside, and it wasn't until I realized like my mental couldn't take that like I try to be upfront and honest with everything. Like if I'm happy, I'm happy. If I'm sad, I'm sad. If I'm angry, here's why. Watch out. So it's like yeah, because it all those things pile up,
Yeah.
and when it falls over,
Oh, man.
watch out. You know what I mean?
Oh, man. Okay, I'm going to end it with this. So with all this, with we're working with the kids and like your poetry and everything you're doing, what are your future plans for everything?
I think short term, I want to start performing again with my singing and so on. So I'd like to really put that in the forefront, because I've gotten away from writing songs. I've been writing poetry, like I said, forever, but I've gotten away from my songwriting. I think I want to pick that back up as well as performing.
Yeah.
And in terms of poetry, I definitely want to get into doing some spoken word and enter some poetry writing contests. More long term, I would love to write a book.
Oh,
So
wow.
I'm thinking within the next 5 years, I will be an author.
Okay.
So that's definitely on my list of things to do, and I know eventually I'll get there.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Jandera, thanks for coming in.
Thank you for
I'm
having
super
me.
grateful. So I'm gonna clear myself up and have you read one of your poems, right?
I would love that. Thank you.
Thank you.
The D-boy wrestler. We met in a bar. Never thought it would last. My, how those 6 months went by fast. I never told him this, but he gave me hope. Even though it probably wasn't smart to be with him, he was a dope. He was smart, though. He could work a rope. I'd never take that away from him. His work ethic was no joke. I could tell he never really loved himself, no matter the front he put on inside or outside of the house. Like a player, he put everyone on the shelf, only being selfish, looking out for himself. Oh, but that's ego. I know you see it. And every time he smiled, I wondered if he meaned it. He broke my heart, if you can't tell. I'm not the only one he put through hell. This one, that one, I've heard the stories, also seen. But the one he hurt the most was himself when he was in his glory. This is where we end this story. At now for lease. He was the wrestler, and I had a front row seat. Make up to fight apology. When I'm sorry that all I showed you was anger, But if I didn't do that, all I would have shown you were tears. I tried to be brave, but I still have fears. You're always so worried about what people think, the ones we call our peers. I can handle the situation, just not it being made about someone else. I always leave first the proverbial house of friendship, relationships, lovers, and family. That's only because I've been through tough situations and anticipate situations ending badly. I always reach out when I'm wrong, a text or a call, but the pings of the rings don't go through and then I fall into oblivion, heartbroken again, searching for my lover, my boy, my friend. Still would do it all over again just to feel it again. 1 second, 1 minute, 1 hour, beginning to end. People talk shit about me and smile in my face. I know. I'm not quick to forget, but I still see skeletons walking behind them, all carrying caskets. This is not an apology. I tried to get through. This is just something I wrote on the fly, hoping the message would reach you. So like a note in a bottle or a paper tied to a bird, love pinks for you, and like a flame, it'll always burn.
This is the Blackout Podcast.
Thanks for listening.